You must love podcasts if you're listening to this. Do you want to start your own one or you already have one? Then follow Smarter Podcasting to get expert advice from me, Niall Mackay, the podcast guy. Since 2019, we've worked with over 40 podcasters, produced over 700 episodes, and helped many podcasts get to the top of the Apple Podcast charts. And right now, I'm offering you a professional edit for just $27. Click the link in the show notes.
I wanted to listen to more podcasts, to connect with podcast creators, to connect with podcast listeners. And because I knew that there were already at that time so many hundreds of thousands of podcasts, how could we possibly sift through them all?
The classic version was just audio only, and then they changed to a video-based editing service, essentially, which was a massive revolution and changed everything.
If you are not quite ready to go full in on video, cut it up into clips, and Descript has a function that can do that very easily. It can choose the best clips for you and then edit those clips, set for YouTube, set for TikTok, set for LinkedIn, set for all of the social platforms that you want to appear on, and you're good to go.
Welcome back to another episode of Smarter Podcasting with me, your host, Niall Mackay. I started my first podcast in 2019. It was just a hobby. I did it for fun. And over the years, I realized I learned so much that I wanted to share that with other people. So I started 7 Million Bikes podcast, and we now work with podcasters all over the world to help them produce the best podcast possible. Now, in this episode, I am super excited. We're going to be talking about the program that basically changed my life. I changed from GarageBand to this program in around 2021, and that program is Descript. Now, in this episode, I'm going to be talking to the community marketing manager from Descript. She is the founder of Earbuds Podcast Collective, a board member of the Podcast Academy, and she's a host of a few podcasts that focus on the podcast industry. So I am very excited to be talking today to Arielle Nissinblatt. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
I am really excited to talk about Descript. As I mentioned to you before we started, I probably wouldn't have a career in podcasting if it wasn't for Descript. So I used to use GarageBand just on my own podcast, and it was a great program, but it took so long to do anything. You can't really move things about so much. You can't cut filler words, anything like that. I go back now and listen to old episodes. I just had a Blue Yeti microphone sitting in the middle of the room. And, a lot of podcasts, that's how they start out. And then, I didn't want to spend money like a lot of podcasters in the beginning. I looked at Descript and I was like, I don't think I can pay that. And then eventually I was like, all right, I'm going to try it. So I tried it.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. And the amount of time it's saved. And now it's just changed so much over the years as well. So tell me though, obviously you've got a massive career history in podcasting. I saw that you started podcasting or in the industry back in 2017. So tell me, what brought you into podcasting?
Love of listening was my first entry point. I just really wanted to do whatever it took to work in podcasting. This was I started listening in 2014. By 2016, I was living in Los Angeles and I was constantly stuck in traffic and hating it, but loving listening to podcasts, and realized that this is like really what energized me. I was very early in my career. I was 24 at the time, and I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life. And I realized that podcasts, I didn't know if there was a career there, but I wanted to do whatever it took to be employed by this industry. So I started my own thing, which was a podcast recommendation newsletter called Earbuds Podcast Collective. And I started that because I wanted to listen to more podcasts, to connect with podcast creators, to connect with podcast listeners. And because I knew that there were already at that time so many hundreds of thousands of podcasts, how could we possibly sift through them all? And maybe this newsletter could help. So that's what got me started. So that's how I started. And then the challenge was, how do I figure out how to actually get paid? So a few months into the newsletter, and on the side, I was doing tons of side jobs. I think that year, which was 2017, I think I had 7 jobs of some sort.
Amazing.
Stringing them all together, making it happen.
So just before I really got serious it was post-pandemic. So just trying to survive. I had 8 different gigs going at one time, just bouncing from one thing to the next, just trying to make things happen. And what changed for me was saying, I need to stop and I need to start saying no and focus on one thing. And that one thing was making podcasts, because I'm also stand-up comedian. I was an English teacher. I even making TikTok videos for some random company. Like I was just doing So one of the podcasts I make is for a pharmaceutical marketing company. And then they said to me, do you want to come and do some of the pharmaceutical marketing? So I was on the phone to doctors, interviewing them, patients. And that was one of the 8 jobs that I was doing. And it was the beginning of 2023 that I was like, I need to start saying no and just focus on one thing. And similar to you as well, loved podcasts. It's what I'd done, what I was doing. But I was like, how do I make money from this? And for me, it was stop making my own podcast and start making podcasts for other people.
So what are we doing right now?
Yeah, exactly. Well, the reason I'm doing this podcast is so people know I'm so amazing and they listen to this and they're like, oh my God, I want to work with that guy. Sorry, everybody. I just gave you an inside tip. You've found me out.
You're being manipulated right now.
That is why I'm doing this podcast, so you can see how amazing I am. So make sure you go to the show notes, check it out. There's the link there. You can find out my Descript affiliate link and you'll be able to book some time with me as well.
Yeah. Wow. Perfect. Great sale. That's exactly it. It was all about stringing jobs together in order to do what I wanted to do, which I didn't even know what it was at the time. I really just had this newsletter going. And then, as luck would have it, Podcast Movement, which is a huge podcast conference in the US, was taking place that year in the greater Los Angeles area. So I found out who the founders were and I emailed them and I kind of like begged for a free ticket in exchange for running ads in my newsletter, even though I really didn't have that many subscribers. And my newsletter was really ugly at the time. Like I really was using Gmail and it was not a beautiful aesthetic experience. But I finally realized I should learn an email service provider. So I learned MailChimp and I started taking online classes about email marketing and how to write efficiently and all that kind of stuff, all while I was doing many different side jobs. And, the newsletter started picking up steam and I started really just putting myself out there and reaching out to podcast people, both business people and creators and listeners who were in the Los Angeles area and asking them if I could just get them a coffee and talk with them about, this is always my line, how they got to where they are today. I, at the time, was just like, I was young. I think I came off as ambitious. I hope I still do. I hope that never goes away. But, at the time I was emailing people and just being like, hey, I really admire your work. I am looking to do this in the podcast space. Any chance you'd be open for a coffee? I would love to hear about where you got to where you are today. And I think that comes off a lot differently than, hey, can I pick your brain about the podcast industry? I think the earnestness of that is a lot more exciting for somebody who might potentially want to get coffee with me. So anyway, I did a lot of those calls and slowly built up my network, and all the while was listening to tons of podcasts. So my brain was constantly spinning with new ideas. And also, this is my big theory about Los Angeles. I think it is such a creative city because of the traffic. I think you're stuck in traffic and you have to think. And so I came up with my best ideas when I was stuck in traffic. I had so many ideas in 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020. I lived there for 4 years and I would be on a long car ride. And by the time I parked my car, I'd be like, I need to write everything down.
That's really interesting.
It was a creative boom time.
So when I was doing comedy, I would think of a lot of my jokes when I was in traffic as well, in Saigon, driving my bike, because it is a time where you can shut everything out. You can't look at your phone. You can't talk to anybody. And so, I would get off the bike. And honestly, I would be the same as you because everybody drives a motorbike here. I would get off the motorbike and then write it
7 million bikes.
Yes, exactly. That's why it's called 7 million.
Is that where that comes from?
Yeah, that is exactly where it comes from. Yeah. So your career then took you to Squadcast, which we are using to record right now. And Squadcast then took you to Descript, which I talked about in the beginning. How has that transition been, and what was that like working for Squadcast and then now with Descript?
Yeah, I feel like I should quickly bridge the gap between traffic, newsletter, and like having a full-time job. I'll do that quickly. A few years passed, but I had new ideas all the time. And one of those ideas was that there should be podcast studios in co-working spaces. So I pitched the idea to a bunch of different co-working spaces throughout Los Angeles. And one place in particular was like, hell yeah, let's do it. Build the studio, find some engineers, find some clients, let's make it happen. And so I did that. And then I used that space, the co-working space, to host networking events and to host podcast festivals and continued to build up my network. And I still also went to all of the podcast festivals that I could go to for free as much as I could, paid what I needed to, and just continued making connections. And then in 2019, I got my first full-time job. I mean, I guess the studio was a full-time job, but I got my first like official full-time job in podcasting. I worked at Castbox, which is the podcast listening app. I worked there for about a year. And then in 2020, during the pandemic, I switched and I started working at Squadcast, and I started managing the community there. It was my first foray into a SaaS company. And it like totally changed my mind as it relates to software. I had no idea how software worked before that. And then I was there for 3 years. Really interesting. We can get into it another time. And then we got acquired by Descript. A year ago today, I believe, is the day that I started working at Descript. Yeah. We didn't announce it until August, but we were working at Descript for 2 months before. And it happened. It was such an exciting time when my boss was like, hey, by the way, like this is what's happening. We're gonna be working at Descript. And I was like, that makes so much sense to me. It makes so much sense that Descript should have a remote recording platform built in.
People have been wanting it for a while, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's great. So I have been there for a year. My job is community marketing manager. I interface with podcasters and video creators about how they use Descript and how they want to use Descript and what's missing and what they love and what education they need in order to use it better. So I'm constantly talking to podcasters, constantly talking to audio and video creators. And I love advocating for creators and figuring out exactly what their workflow should be. And I continue this newsletter that I've been doing. It keeps me in the know with what's going on in the podcast space. And I also, because of that, am able to do a lot of marketing related consulting. But that's not what we're talking about today. We're talking about Descript.
Well, I mean, I am a total fanboy of Descript, and I have been for a while. So I'm an affiliate partner. Like we talked about, I've applied to be an ambassador, which will hopefully be approved soon. I just spoke at Podfest in Asia, which was in the Philippines, and it was how to use, it was top 10 tips to edit using Descript. So I literally...
You did?
Yeah.
Oh my God, send that to us.
It's already online. You can go to my channel. This is before we add the limiter and the compressor. You can see big spikes in the audio. It goes up and down. Studio sound doesn't like this. It doesn't deal well with big spikes. And as I mentioned at the beginning, I wouldn't have a business if it wasn't for Descript, because once I started doing my own podcasts, I started doing them from other people. Most of my clients already have a Descript account, or if they don't already, I'll tell them to sign up for the free one so we can share projects.
This is such ridiculous product placement,
I know.
I am.
I want one though. I want one. You got to send one to Vietnam. But yeah, so I love the program. It makes life so much easier. It's way more fun. And then if we go before Squadcast was acquired, which I know that Descript users were screaming out for an integration with a video platform, because I was using a different platform for videos before the integration, and I was already on the pro account, or what I can't remember the name. I think that's the top one, right? I have to have 2 accounts because I use so many hours and then combine them to get enough hours of transcription minutes. Before Squadcast was acquired, I could see already, I was looking at the market, looking at what was happening, and you could see the transition to video. And I'm a bit of a podcast dinosaur because I was against it. I was so resistant in the beginning.
I was too.
I would have arguments online with people and be like, no, a podcast is audio only. It is not a video. That is a YouTube channel. That is a vlog. It is not a big... And it still frustrates me when people have a YouTube only channel and they call it a podcast. And here in Vietnam, some people still don't understand the term. I was working with a client and they were like, oh, we're going to record a podcast today. And I was like, oh, because I do their podcast. So I was a bit confused. And I was like, oh, okay, what is it? And it turned out they were just shooting like a 10-minute promo video. And I was like, that's not a podcast. That's just...
Right. There's no RSS feed here.
It's just a video. So I was very resistant with video, but I could see the transition. And now myself, including this video that we're doing right now, I'm fully have my podcast channel, this Smarter Podcasting, and a Vietnam podcast, which was my original channel, which I restarted recently, fully in 4K on YouTube, learning all about how to make YouTube videos work and also having the audio available. So for me, you do need to have the audio to be called a podcast. And it does still frustrate me that people have video only channels and they call them a podcast. Like, it's easy, man. Just take the audio off the video and put it on Buzzsprout or Captivate or whatever and get the audio out there. But I saw that transition coming and that's what most of my clients I'm working with now are all doing video. And Descript obviously saw that as well, because they did a massive change before the Squadcast takeover, where they changed from an audio only platform when I first started. And the biggest difference with Transcript at the time was it was the only, or it was the first, correct me if I'm wrong, text-based audio transcription service, or
that's my understanding.
Service.
Yeah, transcript editor.
And that's what made it so unbelievable. Because, I mean, when I first started, if you wanted a show transcribed, it was going to cost you $50, $60, $70, $100, a lot of money.
It was going to be a separate thing from your editing platform.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So
here you have it all together.
To then be able to edit like a doc, as Descript calls it, but that is what it is. You edit like a doc. Just made life so much easier. But then they changed to storyboard, and that caused so many problems for so many people. And this would have been before you started, but were you aware of those problems, or are you still?
I became aware of them after. And it was, I think right when I started, I think they had transitioned a few months from classic to storyboard. And I think bugs are definitely something that we're aware of. The restart issues are something that we're aware of, but we just released, and here's my pivot, here's my professional pivot. We just released something new just earlier in June. And it's storyboard remastered. It's like the new version of storyboard, and it has fewer restarts and everything is much cleaner. Have you noticed the difference?
This was one of the changes that I thought instantly was better. So often there'll be a change and then you're scrambling around going, where is this function? Where is that function? I can't find this. I can't find that. This was one where it changed and I dreaded it. And I normally don't dread a change when it comes up restart. And I'm like, oh God. And I'd already seen somebody post a screenshot on one of the Facebook groups. And I was like, oh God, what's this going to be?
Another Descript restart.
Yeah, but I did it.
We know. We love it.
And then I was like, this is much better. The only thing I couldn't find was, the only thing that's not intuitive is how to apply to all scenes.
Got it.
Now I know how to do it. And I had to ask my editor, I had to message Chelsea and I was like, Chelsea, how do I apply to all scenes? I cannot find this at all. Once you find it, it's like a lot of things in Descript. Once you know, you know. But if you don't know. But just at that time, they changed, for anyone who doesn't know exactly what we're talking about, the classic version was just audio only. And then they changed to a video-based editing service, essentially, which was a massive revolution and changed everything. The user interface changed. And I do think they brought it out too soon because they had to make changes almost on a daily basis. Like, it wasn't ready, I don't think, when they brought it out for the front user, because there was so many.
I wasn't there, can't comment.
No, I know you weren't there, but that was the issue.
I will say, yes, it changed everything, but I think what a lot of audio only creators miss is that you can still use it for audio only, and you don't really have to use the video components. You just have to make sure it's an audio project. Yeah. I
understand that. Don't worry.
Yeah, you get it.
I get
it. And now the world knows because they're listening to 7 million Bikes' podcast, Podcasting Smarter.
But so once it changed, it changed everything for us because it changed before we saw the change coming, which made me aware of like video is coming. If Descript has already looked at the market and gone, we need to incorporate video editing. And I absolutely love it. Like, I love editing video now. I've never used DaVinci Resolve. I've never used Premiere Pro. I've never used Adobe Audition. And I know that I was talking to someone about this recently. Those are like movie making programs. Like literally, if you're going to make a movie or a music video or a professional ad, those are the programs you use. If you're just making a podcast with one camera or two cameras, you don't need DaVinci Resolve and all of these. The other thing I love the most about Descript is that it's cloud-based, and those programs aren't cloud-based. So I have a team around the world and
Right.
we can all work on a project at the same time. I have clients around the world. They can make a project. We can do it. We can all work on it. I can.
Right. The collaboration tools are very robust and continue to get better.
Yeah, absolutely incredible. So that for me has been the best part of it, I think, is the cloud-based aspect of it. Yeah. So what has been the big changes in lately? We talked about the Underlord has come in, which is more of the AI, which is good. But explain more about these recent changes and what has been the big changes in Descript, and what changes do you see and have you seen in the podcast market in terms of moving to video?
Yeah. The number one word that comes to mind is clips, social clips. I guess 2 words, social clips, huge. So I guess this is a really good transition phrase. If you are not quite ready to go full in on video, if you don't want to take this whole 20, however many minutes we're going to record for, and edit that down and upload the whole thing to YouTube. If you don't want to do all of that, take this video, cut it up into clips, and Descript has a function that can do that very easily. It can choose the best clips for you, and then edit those clips. Make sure those clips sound good. Make sure that the guest looks their best, sounds their best. Make sure your captions are on point. Make sure maybe you're throwing in some B-roll. Maybe you're throwing in some other images and things like that. So it's a dynamic video, and then you can make sure that it's set for YouTube, set for TikTok, set for LinkedIn, set for all of the social platforms that you want to appear on, and you're good to go. I mean, that's a really great way to experiment with video, not go full in, but still try your hand at it and see if your audience is biting. So that's a huge change that I've seen over the past, I want to say 2 years, but really now everybody, not just within Descript, every person who has a podcast is talking about creating clips, like cutting clips. There is a person on their team whose job it is to cut clips.
100%. And when I'm working with clients, when I'm explaining it to them, so the clips are going to get about 100 to 1,000 times more views than maybe the actual podcast or the YouTube channel will get listens to.
Yeah.
And you just have to realize that it's a totally different medium. They're not going to consume the whole content. But if part of the reason that you have a podcast, and this is why you should have a podcast, is to promote your brand authority, to promote your leadership, all people need to see is that 30-second clip. And they're like, oh, you're the guy with the insurance podcast, or you're the guy with this. Like, even I had it last night. I was at a charity event and this woman was like, oh, I saw your podcast. Like, it's awesome, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, oh, cool. Did you watch the whole episode? And she's like, oh, no, I just saw the clip. And I was like, no, that's awesome. I mean, that's what you want.
Who cares?
Now she knows I have a podcast.
Yeah. You listen to something that I put out, you watch something that I put out, and therefore you know who I am. And ultimately, I think a lot of people worry like, oh, my clips get hundreds of thousands of impressions and views and likes, but they're not converting to my podcast. And wouldn't it be nice, yes, if they converted to your podcast, but they won't in the same way, because the people that are consuming your content for 30 seconds aren't necessarily looking to listen to your hour-long podcast. It's not the same thing. They're not in that mindset. But as long as they are consuming what you are putting out there, it's, who cares where it's happening, as long as they are understanding that you're an authority in the space that you're claiming to be an authority in. So I think it's just about consistently showing up and proving that you're valuable, so that a tiny percentage of the people that find you click on your links and maybe become a customer, or whatever the customer equivalent is to you. Sign up for your newsletter. Maybe, there's so many different calls to action that they could take part in. But for your case, of course, you want people to land on your profile, set up a consultation call, maybe become a client. So the funnel gets smaller and smaller.
Well, this leads me into the question I was going to ask. And I think what a lot of people ask as well is, do clips turn into listeners? Which I think you've answered is no, which would be which is I say to people, it might, but it's not the main purpose of them, right?
No, it's not the main purpose. The main purpose, I think, when you are somebody who is cutting clips and making video and making a podcast, is to have people hear and consume your message. And in my opinion, it doesn't necessarily matter where they consume that message, and you should probably follow the people. So if they are consuming that message on TikTok, maybe you should lean into TikTok. If they're consuming that message, if they love you in long form, then maybe your podcast is the way to go. Maybe what you do is you experiment for 3 months, you go all in on TikTok, and yes, you're recording the full length of the podcast, but you're putting all of your marketing efforts behind TikTok. You're doing keyword research there. You're commenting a lot on other TikToks. You're really trying to build up your brand there. And then, yes, a small percentage of those people will click on your profile, will listen to your podcast, will become loyal subscribers. And then even from there, a smaller percentage might sign up for your things. But yeah, my whole thing is, I think you make clips because there are so many people who are on TikTok, who are on Reels, who are on YouTube Shorts. And we just want to take advantage of that traffic. There's so many possibilities. And podcasts are great because they're longer form. They allow you to expand upon your ideas. They have a longer tail. You know, a TikTok will maybe go viral, but that virality will subside after a while. Your podcast, people can come back to, and it lives in a more evergreen space.
I love it. And I explain to people as well, what I say to people I work with is the ideal thing. We want to make a video. That's the main asset. Then that's going to live on YouTube. But what I explain to people is on YouTube, you're lucky if you get 20 to 40% retention or engagement. Literally, YouTube tells you that if you have 50% of people still watching at 30 seconds, you're doing well. So if you lose 50% of your viewers after 30 seconds, you're still doing well. Whereas with an audio podcast, you're going to get about 80% roughly are going to consume the whole lot. So what I say to people, you create the video for YouTube. It's great for discoverability. It's great for the video. Not many people are going to sit and watch a whole hour-long YouTube video of two people having a conversation, but that's fine. Then we take the audio, we put that on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. People are going to consume it. They're going to listen to it. They're going to engage with it. And then we break that video down into little clips, which is going to get 100 to 1,000 more views, but it's not going to turn into podcast listeners. They're all, what I try and explain to people is per se, but not a lot, right?
I'm a big caveat girl. I love caveats. I hate making blanket statements because I never want people to be like, you said this.
Yeah. I thought you said you were a caviar girl there at first. I was like, ugh.
Love caveats and caviar. No, I don't. I'm a vegetarian. Caviar is fish, right?
Yeah, fish eggs. I've never had it. Sounds disgusting.
Not into it.
No. But just to finish up, what I wanted to, you mentioned something about B-roll, so this is another function that Descript has added recently. And if you haven't explored it yet, and if you're using Descript, if you're not using Descript, go to the show notes, click my affiliate link, make sure you use the affiliate link. But if you're not using Descript, you really should be. It is incredible. But the B-roll in there is unbelievable. Even this morning, I was working out with my trainer. He's Vietnamese. And I was showing him a little clip of one of my videos that I've just made about Vietnamese food that I eat. The intro has all these like 1 second clips, videos of Vietnam. And he's watching it. He's like, where did you get all these from? Because they're all 4K, like high def. And I was like, these are all like, the program I use has all of these built in. It's incredible. You can find almost anything. Like I type in Vietnam food, there's a whole bunch of videos. I type in Vietnam traffic. It is Vietnam traffic. Like I see the license plates. Like I see the addresses in the background. It's not just like random Asian country traffic. I don't know where you get all these clips from. And what
we partner with a third party that does the stock imagery. Yeah. And it's all licensed and it's perfect. Yeah. It works really well. And it just adds a dynamicism to your videos.
And what I love the most about everything with Descript, and I'll stop fanboying after this, is...
No, never.
What I think Descript has done amazingly well, which I've never really heard being talked about, is they remove steps. So before, you used to have to download your audio and then upload it to Buzzsprout or Captivate, right? So there's an extra step. You have to download the video, then put it on YouTube. When they took over Squadcast, what I love is we're going to finish this recording, and then there's a button that instantly puts it into Descript. I don't have to download from Squadcast, then upload it to Descript. That to me was like, this is incredible. And it's the same with the B-roll as well. So it's not like I have to go and find royalty-free videos, music, which you can do. There's so much out there. You can go to YouTube library or whatever it's called. There's a million websites out there where you can get free clips. I would have to then go somewhere else, find them, download them, then upload them to Descript. Now,
and that's going to get even easier. All of this integration, all of the Squadcast stuff, all of the remote recording, Well, right now, they're still two separate apps. They will not be in the future.
Everyone's waiting for that. I know. I thought it's been a year now, you said, almost since Squadcast integrated.
We're working on it.
I know.
Yeah.
I've seen so many people message about it. Like, we're waiting on the day that we can do this inside the Descript, inside the Descript app. But I've always known it's coming. I'm just waiting for it.
Soon.
I'm very, very excited about that. Well, I've fanboyed enough. Arielle, thank you so much. I've been really, really looking forward to this because I've seen your career over the last few years. I've seen you pop up in different places. And then when I saw you were at Descript, I was like, unbelievable. I definitely want to get you back on. So I hope you'll come back on. And there's so many things that we can talk about. And I'm really excited to explore them and discuss them. We've covered mostly video today and a few other things as well. Is there anything else that you want to share with people? You've shared a little bit that Squadcast and Descript is going to finally integrate. Is there anything else you want to share with people before we go?
I like to give like a tangible takeaway. If you have not tried to make clips, try to make one clip. And there's no perfect length for that clip. There's no perfect portion of the podcast that should get clipped. Try something and then next week try something else. You never know what could go viral or, hit the right demographic. Doesn't necessarily have to go viral.
Love it. And I've been doing this for 5 years now, and I'm still waiting to be an overnight success. Like, I cannot wait for that day to come when I get called an overnight success. One day. Yeah, it's going to happen. So thank you so much for watching or listening to this episode, because it is on YouTube. We're on Apple Podcast, Apple Podcast, Spotify, all of those good things. If you haven't already, make sure you please subscribe, follow, turn on the notifications, all that good stuff. And one of the best things that you can do for me right now is actually share this episode with somebody else. So if you found this valuable, then please share it with another podcaster so they can learn from this as well. So Arielle, thank you so much. This has been incredible. And I am really looking forward to talking to you again and seeing the future Descript update.
Thank you for having me.
You are very welcome. Cheers.
Hi, my name is Sal Jeffries. I run the Mindset, Mood and Movement podcasts. I've been working with Neil at 7 Million Bikes for the whole of this year, literally from the start of my podcast to date. And I want to say a couple of things. So when we record the podcast, sometimes there are things that I need tweaking. There could be edits or clips. It's really simple. I give those instructions to Neil, he gets it sorted. There's sometimes a sound level differences between the guest mic and mine. Again, that's all sorted so the outcome is a really balanced sound. And also if there are issues with voice, little kind of sound interruptions, all those things that can distract a listener, Neil knows exactly what to do, cleans it up. The end result, a highly professional, beautiful sounding podcast without distraction. That's exactly what I want. I know my listeners do. So if you're interested in having that level of podcast and that kind of quality, Neil is a great guy and I highly recommend you speak to him.